The morning sun cast long shadows across the peaceful farms of New Eden. Children ran between the grain fields, while their parents worked the soil that fed three-star systems. The human colony had grown from a small outpost to a thriving world in just 50 years. Nobody expected it to die in a single day. Captain Marcus Rodriguez watched the news feeds from his patrol ship in orbit. The Galactic Council was arguing again. The same old problems. The Zephyrian hegemony wanted more trade routes. The Altarian Republic was complaining about human expansion. The usual political games that had been going on for 300 years. Humans had learned to live with it. Ever since first contact in 2387, humanity had chosen the path of peace. When the Zeph Raiders attacked human ships, Earth sent strongly worded protests. When the Altarians claimed human colonies violated their ancient borders, human diplomats found compromise. When the Stellar Consortium banned human goods from their markets, humans just found new customers. The galaxy saw this as weakness. Marcus knew better. He had served in the Terran Defense Force for 20 years. He had seen the hidden bases. He knew what humanity was really capable of. But orders were orders. Peace at any cost. Show restraint. Be the better species. That morning, everything changed. The attack began at 0800 local time. Zephyrian warships dropped out of hyperspace without warning. Their first targets were the orbital defense platforms. The human stations sent emergency signals, but the Zeph ships ignored all attempts at communication. They had not come to talk. Marcus watched in horror as the enemy fleet opened fire. The small human defense force fought back, but they were outnumbered 10 to 1. One by one, the human ships exploded in silent flashes of light. His own vessel was too far away to help. By the time he could reach the battle, it was over. The Zephyrians landed troops on New Eden's surface. They moved like a plague across the farming communities. Human civilians tried to surrender, but the Zeph soldiers had different orders. The killing began immediately. Governor Sarah Chen tried to negotiate from the colony's capital city. She offered complete surrender. She begged for the lives of her people. The Zephyrian commander, General Vextar, listened to her pleas with cold yellow eyes. Then he gave his response by shooting her in the head during the live broadcast. The massacre that followed was recorded by the colony's automated systems. Every news network in the galaxy received the feeds. The Zephyrians wanted the universe to see what happened to species that forgot their place. They executed government officials in public squares. They herded civilians into work camps. They destroyed schools and hospitals just to prove they could. But the worst part was not the killing. It was the laughter. Zephyrian soldiers took videos of themselves hunting human children like animals. They posted the recordings on galactic social networks with captions like, "Teaching the Softskins their place" and "Pest Control on New Eden." The galaxy watched. Some species expressed mild concern. Others stayed silent. A few even congratulated the Zephyrians for maintaining order in their sector. Nobody offered to help. Nobody demanded justice. The universe had grown too comfortable with human suffering. Marcus received new orders 3 days later. Return to Earth immediately. No explanations. No details. Just coordinates and a priority code he had never seen before. He set course for home, his heart full of rage and his hands shaking with the need to do something. Anything. Earth looked the same as always. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. But something was different in the space around humanity's homeworld. Ships were moving. Lots of ships. Military vessels that Marcus had never seen before emerged from hidden bases throughout the solar system. They were massive, dark, and covered in weapon systems that violated every galactic treaty. Admiral Sarah Chen, the governor's sister, met Marcus at the docking station. Her face was carved from stone, her eyes burning with cold fire. She handed him a sealed data packet. "New orders, Captain," she said. "Read them carefully. We're about to remind the galaxy why our ancestors conquered their own planet before they reached the stars." Marcus opened the packet with trembling hands. The message was short and signed by every member of Earth's High Command. To all Terran Defense Force personnel. Effective immediately, all rules of engagement are suspended. All treaties limiting military action are void. All restrictions on weapons usage are lifted. The Zephyrian hegemony has demonstrated that peace is not valued by this galaxy. We will now demonstrate why peace should be valued. Show them what happens when humanity's patience finally ends. Make them understand the gift they have thrown away. Marcus looked up at Admiral Chen. Ma'am, what about the other species? The Council will never allow— The Council? Chen's laugh was like ice cracking. Captain, the Council is about to learn that they exist because we allow it. For 3 centuries we have played by their rules. We have accepted their insults. We have turned the other cheek while they spat in our faces. That ends today. She pointed to the view screen where hundreds of human warships were forming up into battle formations. Every species in this galaxy thinks they know what humans are capable of. They're about to discover they were wrong. We didn't choose peace because we were weak. We chose peace because we knew what war would cost. Today the bill comes due. The Admiral's communicator buzzed. She listened for a moment, then nodded. Captain Rodriguez, you're being transferred to the battleship Retribution. Your new mission is to assist in the liberation of New Eden, or more accurately, what's left of it. Liberation, ma'am? Chen's smile was the most terrifying thing Marcus had ever seen. Oh yes, Captain. We're going to liberate the Zephyrians. We're going to liberate them from their ships, their worlds, their government, and their illusions of superiority. We're going to liberate them so thoroughly that they'll beg us to stop. She turned to leave, then paused. By the way, Captain, you might want to send a message to any family or friends you have serving with alien species. Tell them to distance themselves from their alien colleagues. In the next few days, being associated with non-humans is going to become very dangerous. Marcus watched her go, his mind reeling. Around him, the hidden strength of humanity was revealing itself. Ships that had pretended to be cargo haulers unfolded into dreadnoughts. Space stations that had claimed to be research facilities sprouted gun batteries that could crack moons. The asteroid belt itself seemed to be moving as hidden fortress worlds came online. For 300 years, the galaxy had wondered why humans seemed so peaceful despite their violent history. They had theorized that space travel had somehow made humans weak. They were about to learn the truth. Humans had not become peaceful. They had simply been waiting, preparing, building, getting ready for the day when patience would no longer be enough. That day had come. The Zephyrians had killed the wrong people at the wrong time in the wrong way. They had broadcast their crimes to the universe, expecting fear and submission. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity's first steps into space. The 6-day war was about to begin. And when it ended, the galaxy would understand why humanity had spent 3 centuries trying so hard to avoid it. Marcus boarded his new ship and felt the vibrations of massive engines coming online. Through the hull, he could hear the whisper of weapons charging. Around him, thousands of human vessels prepared for departure. The most patient species in the galaxy was finally out of patience. God help them all. The first sign something was wrong came from the automated sensor networks that monitored hyperspace routes throughout the galaxy. Traffic controllers on Nexus Station noticed the anomalies during the night shift. Ships were moving in human space. Lots of ships. Big ships. Ships that weren't supposed to exist. Commander Zektul of the Altarian Republic rubbed his 4 eyes and stared at the display again. According to the sensors, nearly 1,000 vessels had just appeared in the Sol system. The computer was probably malfunctioning. Everyone knew humans only had a few dozen ships, mostly cargo haulers and patrol boats. He called his supervisor. Sir, I'm getting some strange readings from human space. The system is showing massive fleet movements, but that can't be right. Senior Controller Maldoc slithered over to check the display. His tentacles danced across the controls, running diagnostics. The results came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Run a full spectrum analysis, Maldoc ordered. Cross-reference with our intelligence databases. Find out what those ships really are. The results made both aliens stop breathing for a moment. The vessels showed energy signatures consistent with heavy battleships and assault carriers. Some were larger than anything in the galactic database. The largest ship detected was over 8 kilometers long and massing more than a small moon. This has to be an error, Zektul whispered. The humans don't have ships like this. The treaties forbid. His words were cut off by an emergency broadcast that flooded every communication channel in known space. The transmission came from a human ship, but the vessel in the background was unlike anything any species had ever seen. It was enormous, angular, and covered in weapon systems that looked like they could split planets. A human female in military uniform appeared on screen. Her rank insignia indicated an admiral, but the ship behind her suggested authority that went far beyond any single vessel. Her eyes were cold blue ice, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 300 years of accumulated anger. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force, speaking from the battleship Retribution. I am addressing all species, all governments, all beings capable of receiving this transmission. For 3 centuries, humanity has chosen the path of peace. We have endured insults, attacks, and genocide attempts with patience that apparently confused many of you. You mistook our restraint for weakness. You mistook our diplomacy for cowardice. Today, that mistake will be corrected. The Admiral paused and the camera pulled back to show more of her ship. Gun turrets the size of skyscrapers rotated ominously. Launch bays yawned open, revealing fighter craft that gleamed with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian hegemony murdered every human civilian on New Eden. They recorded their crimes. They broadcast their atrocities. They expected fear. Instead, they have achieved something that has not happened since humanity first reached the stars. They have given us a reason to stop holding back. Chen's image was replaced by footage from hidden cameras throughout human space. Mining ships unfolded like mechanical flowers, revealing weapons platforms. Research stations retracted false sections to expose fortress guns. Asteroid belts moved as camouflaged bases came online. The peaceful, harmless humans were revealing an arsenal that dwarfed most species' entire military forces. Every government in this galaxy will now receive a simple message. You have 6 standard hours to publicly denounce the Zephyrian hegemony and withdraw all support from their regime. Any species that chooses to stand with the murderers of New Eden will be considered an enemy combatant. Any species that attempts to interfere with human military operations will face the full consequences of that choice. The Admiral reappeared on screen. Behind her, the bridge of her ship buzzed with activity as human officers prepared for war. For those who believe this is a bluff, I remind you that humanity conquered its homeworld long before we developed interstellar travel. We are a species that survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own nuclear weapons. We reached the stars not because we were peaceful, but because we were too dangerous to be contained on one planet. The transmission ended with coordinates and a timestamp. The coordinates pointed to the edge of Zephyrian space. The timestamp was exactly 6 days in the future. Across the galaxy, governments went into emergency session. The Altarian Republic's leadership gathered in their crystal chambers beneath the ocean of their homeworld. The debate was fierce but brief. This is clearly a human trick, declared Defense Minister Carthul. They cannot possibly have the forces they claim. Our intelligence reports show only minor human military assets. Foreign Minister Villana was less certain. Our intelligence might be wrong. Look at these sensor readings. Look at the size of those ships. What if we have been deceived for 3 centuries? The argument continued for hours. Some counselors believed the humans were bluffing. Others worried about hidden human capabilities. In the end, pride won over caution. The Altarian Republic issued a public statement supporting their Zephyrian allies and condemning human aggression and terrorism. Similar scenes played out across civilized space. The Stellar Consortium mocked human threats while moving their fleets to defensive positions. The hegemony itself responded with sneering contempt, promising to teach the softskins proper respect, just as they had done on New Eden. Only a few smaller species chose differently. The peaceful Corvin Collective immediately denounced the Zephyrians and offered humanitarian aid to human refugees. The nomadic Wanderer clan sent messages of sympathy and withdrew their ships from all contested areas. Most others, however, either supported the hegemony or remained silent. 6 hours after Chen's broadcast, the deadline passed. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would back down or actually follow through on their threats. They did not have to wait long. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory was beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. Nearly 2,000 vessels appeared in perfect formation, ranging from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that seemed to swallow starlight. At their center was Admiral Chen's flagship, the Retribution, a monster of metal and weapons that was larger than some space stations. General Vextar, the Zephyrian commander who had killed Governor Chen, was waiting with his own fleet. He had expected to face a few dozen human ships crewed by angry farmers and merchants. Instead, he found himself staring at a wall of military might that stretched across his sensor screens like a plague of mechanical locusts. Impossible, he breathed, his yellow eyes wide with the first traces of fear. Where did they come from? How did they hide ships this large? His communications officer, a younger Zephyrian named Kelmek, was scanning the human vessels with every sensor they had. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match any known technology. Their weapons are powered by systems I can't identify. And, sir, some of these ships are reading as solid matter, but my scans show they're partially phased into subspace." Vextar's blood ran cold. Subspace phase technology was theoretical. No species had ever successfully built ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. If the humans had actually developed such technology, Admiral Chen's voice echoed across every communication channel in the system. "General Vextar, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Resist, and you will discover why humanity spent 3 centuries trying to avoid this moment." Vexitar's pride overrode his growing fear. He had just conquered a human world. He would not bow to the very species he had defeated. "Human Admiral, you face the might of the Zephyrian hegemony. We who have conquered 40 star systems will not yield to a handful of primitive mammals. Attack!" The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile volleys, and energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. It was an impressive display of firepower that should have crippled any enemy fleet. The human ships simply weren't there anymore. One moment they had been solid targets on every sensor screen. The next moment they had faded into ghostly outlines that weapons passed through harmlessly. The entire human fleet had shifted into a dimensional phase that made them untouchable. Then they fired back. The human weapons were nothing like what the galaxy had seen before. Instead of simple energy beams or explosive missiles, they launched projectiles that seemed to unmake reality itself. Where they struck Zephyrian ships, metal simply ceased to exist. Entire sections of enemy vessels vanished into nothingness, leaving perfect spherical voids where armor and weapons had once been. Vextar watched in horror as his flagship's sister ship simply came apart. Not exploded, not shattered. It just stopped being there piece by piece as human weapons ate through its hull like acid through tissue. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Admiral Chen's response came through his personal communicator, as if the human ship was right next to his bridge instead of thousands of kilometers away. "General, your species has spent 3 centuries believing that humans were weak because we chose not to fight. You never considered that perhaps we chose not to fight because we knew what fighting would cost. Today you learn the price of taking our mercy for granted. The battle, if it could be called that, where the news of the Zephyrian fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major government had received detailed sensor logs of the battle. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about warfare, physics, and humanity itself. On the ocean world of Alteria Prime, Defense Minister Carthul stared at the battle footage for the 20th time. His aquatic form trembled as he watched human ships phase in and out of reality, launching weapons that deleted matter from existence. "Run the analysis again," he ordered his technical staff. "There has to be an explanation. Technology like this cannot exist." Chief Scientist Mordun manipulated the holographic display with his tentacles, highlighting the energy signatures from the human weapons. "Minister, I have checked these readings 17 times. The humans are using controlled antimatter reactions combined with some form of dimensional manipulation. The mathematics alone should be impossible. But it is happening." Carthul's voice was barely a whisper. "They destroyed an entire fleet without losing a single ship. How long have they had technology like this?" "Unknown, sir. But based on the sophistication of these systems, they would have needed decades to develop them, perhaps centuries." The implications hit Carthul like a physical blow. For 300 years, humanity had sat at the galactic table, accepting insults and territory disputes with quiet dignity. All that time, they had possessed weapons that could have conquered the galaxy. They had chosen restraint not from weakness but from a strength so absolute that they had nothing to prove. Until now, Admiral Chen's fleet did not return to human space after their victory. Instead, they moved deeper into Zephyrian territory, systematically destroying every military installation they encountered. But this was not random destruction. The humans fought with surgical precision, targeting only military assets while leaving civilian populations untouched. The siege of Fortress Korvax demonstrated humanity's new approach to warfare. The ancient Zephyrian stronghold had never fallen in 1,000 years of conflict. Its shields could withstand the bombardment of entire fleets. Its weapons could crack moons. When Admiral Chen's ships arrived, the fortress commander was confident his defenses would hold. He was wrong. Human ships did not attack the shields. Instead, they simply passed through them as if they did not exist. The fortress's massive guns swiveled to track targets that flickered in and out of solid space. Energy beams and missile volleys struck nothing but empty vacuum. Then the human Marines arrived. They did not use landing craft or assault pods. They simply appeared inside the fortress, materializing through walls and barriers as if they were made of light. The Zephyrian defenders found themselves fighting enemies who could walk through solid matter, disappear at will, and strike from impossible angles. The battle inside Fortress Korvax lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every Zephyrian soldier was dead or captured, and the humans had not lost a single Marine. The fortress itself remained intact, its ancient walls unmarked by battle. The humans had conquered it from the inside, taking it apart piece by piece with weapons that seemed to operate on principles beyond normal physics. Similar scenes played out across Zephyrian space. Military bases fell without resistance. Fleets were destroyed before they could fire a shot. The proud hegemony that had ruled through fear for centuries was being dismantled with mechanical efficiency. On the third day of the war, the Altarian Republic made a fatal mistake. Admiral Kelvos had been patrolling the Centauri trade routes when he received orders to intercept a human supply convoy. Intelligence suggested it was carrying relief supplies to survivors of the New Eden massacre. The Altarian High Command saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to their Zephyrian allies. Kelvos was not comfortable with the orders. The human convoy consisted of only 3 ships clearly marked as medical transports. Attacking them would violate every principle of civilized warfare. But orders were orders, and the Republic had chosen its side. The ambush was perfectly executed. Kelvos brought his entire battle group out of hyperspace directly in the convoy's path. 12 heavy cruisers and 2 assault carriers surrounded the human ships, cutting off all escape routes. Human vessels. This is Admiral Kelvos of the Altarian Republic Navy. You are carrying contraband supplies to enemy territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response came from the lead human ship, a medical frigate named Mercy. The captain's voice was calm and professional. Admiral, we are carrying medical supplies and food for civilian survivors. We are clearly marked as humanitarian vessels under Section 12 of the Galactic Accords. Please allow us to pass. Kelvos felt his conscience twist, but his orders were clear. Negative, prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with deadly force. What happened next would haunt Kelvos for the rest of his very short life. The 3 human ships did not surrender. They did not try to run. Instead, they simply changed. The medical transports shed their peaceful disguises like snakes shedding skin. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed bays. Engines that had appeared standard revealed themselves to be powerful military drives. The convoy transformed into a strike force that outgunned Kelvos's entire battle group. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was Admiral Chen's voice echoing across every communication channel in the system. Admiral Kelvos, you have just attacked clearly marked humanitarian vessels carrying aid to civilian survivors. Under the Terran military code, this constitutes an act of piracy and war crimes. Your government has chosen to make the Altarian Republic an active combatant in this conflict. The consequences of that choice will now be demonstrated. Kelvos tried to explain, tried to apologize, tried to offer surrender. None of it mattered. His ships were already dying around him as human weapons tore through Altarian armor like tissue paper. But the humans were not just destroying his fleet. They were recording everything, broadcasting it to the galaxy, making sure everyone could see what happened to species that attacked human medical ships. Within hours of Kelvos's death, the full might of humanity's hidden military began moving toward Altarian space. But this was not the systematic surgical approach they had used against the Zephyrians. This was something different, something angrier. The assault on the Altarian home system was a masterpiece of applied terror. Human ships did not simply attack military targets. They targeted everything that made the Altarian Republic function as a government. Orbital stations vanished in bursts of impossible fire. The Capitol building on Altaria Prime was reduced to its component atoms. The Republic's ruling council was captured during an emergency session, their chambers invaded by human soldiers who materialized through solid walls. Admiral Chen herself appeared on every news network in Altarian space. Behind her, the burning wreckage of their finest battle fleet drifted in space like funeral pyres. "Citizens of the Altarian Republic," she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Your government has chosen to attack human medical vessels carrying aid to civilian survivors. This action has consequences. Your military forces are destroyed. Your government is dissolved. Your leaders are in custody. Your species now exists at the mercy of humanity." The camera pulled back to show Chen standing on the bridge of her flagship as it hung in orbit above Altaria Prime. The planet's defense grid, built over centuries, lay in ruins around them. "However," Chen continued, "humanity does not make war on civilians. Your people will not be harmed. Your worlds will not be occupied. But your government's authority is ended. The Altarian Republic is hereby dissolved. Individual planets may choose their own governments, but any attempt to reform a central authority will be prevented. You have learned why humanity preferred peace. Do not make us teach you again." The dissolution of the Altarian Republic sent shockwaves across the galaxy. This was not conquest in any traditional sense. The humans had not taken territory or enslaved populations. They had simply erased a government from existence, demonstrating that they could unmake entire civilizations at will. On the fourth day of the war, panic began spreading through the Stellar Consortium. Intelligence reports showed massive human fleet movements heading toward their space. Emergency sessions of the Consortium Council devolved into chaos as member species argued over how to respond. Some wanted to fight. Others begged for negotiation. A few suggested immediate surrender. The debate became academic when Admiral Chen's fleet arrived at the edge of Consortium space and began systematically destroying their border defenses. This time, the humans did not offer ultimatums or demands. They simply attacked, moving through Consortium territory like a plague of mechanical death. Battle fleets that had never known defeat were swept aside in hours. Fortress worlds that had stood for millennia fell in minutes. The humans had stopped trying to minimize casualties. They had moved beyond surgical strikes and precision warfare. This was extermination carried out with scientific efficiency. The Consortium's last battle fleet made its final stand at the Nexus system, the political and economic heart of their civilization. 200 ships, the finest vessels in their navy, waded in. By the fourth day of the war, the galactic communication networks were flooded with desperate messages. Species that had remained neutral were scrambling to distance themselves from the conflict. Governments that had supported the Zephyrian hegemony just days before were now issuing public statements denouncing their former allies. The Corvin Collective, who had wisely chosen neutrality from the beginning, found themselves overwhelmed with requests for mediation. Ambassador Telshan, the Corvin representative to the Galactic Council, had not slept in 48 hours as desperate alien leaders begged him to negotiate with the humans. "Please," Ambassador Velcris of the Centauri Union pleaded over a secure channel. "You must speak to them. We had no choice but to support the hegemony. They threatened our trade routes. We never wanted any of this." Telshan's response was weary. "Ambassador, I have been trying to contact Admiral Chen for 2 days. Her fleet does not respond to diplomatic communications. They only seem interested in military targets." It was true. The human fleet had become a force of nature, moving through space with unstoppable momentum. They ignored all attempts at negotiation, all offers of surrender, all pleas for mercy. They simply continued their systematic destruction of everything connected to the Zephyrian hegemony. The Trillian Federation tried to open negotiations by sending their most experienced diplomat, Ambassador Morgeth, to intercept the human fleet in neutral space. His ship approached Admiral Chen's flagship, broadcasting every peaceful intent signal in the galactic database. The response was not what he expected. Admiral Chen herself appeared on his communication screen, but she was not on the bridge of her ship. She was standing in what appeared to be a vast chamber, filled with holographic displays showing the positions of every military force in the galaxy. Behind her, human officers monitored thousands of screens showing real-time intelligence from across known space. "Ambassador Morgeth," Chen's voice was polite but cold, "I assume you wish to discuss terms for your government's surrender." Morgeth was taken aback. "Admiral, the Trillian Federation has remained neutral in this conflict." "We seek only to mediate between." "Neutral?" Chen interrupted. "Ambassador, Your government voted to condemn human aggression in yesterday's emergency council session. Your media networks have been broadcasting Zephyrian propaganda for the past week. Your banks have been funding hegemony military operations for the past 6 months. Exactly what part of this constitutes neutrality? The Trillion diplomat felt his throat sacs deflate in shock. The humans had been monitoring everything. They knew about every vote, every transaction, every secret deal. The web of connections that bound the galactic community together had been mapped and analyzed by human intelligence services that apparently saw everything. We were not aware that such activities constituted active support for genocide, Chen finished. Ambassador, your species had 300 years to learn what humanity was capable of. You chose to ignore the lessons. Your government will now face the consequences of that choice. The transmission ended. 6 hours later, the Trillion Federation's military forces began mysteriously malfunctioning. Their ship's computers crashed simultaneously across 17 star systems. Their defense networks went offline. Their communications satellites simply stopped working. The humans had not fired a shot. They had simply demonstrated that they could cripple an entire civilization's technology whenever they chose. The Trillion government surrendered within hours, begging for mercy from an enemy that had defeated them without violence. The psychological impact was devastating. If the humans could shut down any species' technology at will, then every computer, every ship, every life support system in the galaxy existed only because humanity allowed it. The comfortable assumption that the galaxy's various species were technological equals crumbled overnight. On the 5th day of the war, the remaining members of the Galactic Council attempted to organize unified resistance. Representatives from 43 species gathered in emergency session aboard the neutral station, Deep Space Station Alpha. They voted to formally declare humanity a rogue species and authorize a combined military response, Admiral. Chen's response was swift and educational. Human ships began materializing inside the station itself, not docking, not boarding, simply appearing in corridors and chambers as if they had always been there. Station security found themselves facing human soldiers who had somehow bypassed every defense, every scanner, every barrier. The council members were not harmed. They were simply collected. One by one, the galaxy's most powerful leaders found themselves standing in the cargo bay of a human ship, staring at Admiral Chen in person. She was smaller than most of them had expected. A middle-aged human female who looked like she could have been a teacher or an administrator, but her eyes held depths that made ancient beings step back in instinctive fear. Honored representatives, she began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. You have voted to declare my species a threat to galactic peace. This is amusing, considering that for 3 centuries we have been the only thing preventing galactic war. She gestured to the holographic displays surrounding them. They showed star maps marking every conflict, every territorial dispute, every trade war that had been resolved through human mediation over the past 300 years. We have negotiated peace between the Vrex Empire and the Silicon Republics 18 times. We have prevented the hive clusters from consuming the Outer Rim colonies 47 times. We have mediated trade disputes that would have led to economic warfare between your species more than 200 times. We have been the immune system of this galaxy, preventing conflicts that would have killed billions. The holographic displays changed, showing massive fleets hidden throughout human space, weapons that could crack planets, ships that could phase between dimensions, technology that reduced the galaxy's combined military forces to primitive toys. You assumed we did this because we were weak, because we needed your approval, because we feared your retaliation. Chen's smile was colder than the void between stars. You were wrong. We did it because we understood what would happen if we didn't. Today, you are learning what we have been protecting you from. Ambassador Krelthon of the ancient Vexmari Empire, the oldest and most respected civilization in the galaxy, found his voice. Admiral, what do you want? What will it take to end this madness? Chen's expression softened slightly. Ambassador, this is not madness. This is education. For 300 years, your species have taken human restraint for granted. You have treated our mercy as weakness and our patience as cowardice. The Zephyrian hegemony murdered human civilians and broadcast their crimes as entertainment. Your response was to debate whether the victims deserved it. She pointed to each council member in turn. You, Ambassador Krelthon, suggested that humans had provoked the attack by expanding into Zephyrian space. You, Minister Zelkari, called for measured response to genocide. You, Chancellor Vordak, proposed economic sanctions as an appropriate response to the murder of children. The assembled leaders shifted uncomfortably. Their own words, spoken just days before, sounded monstrous when repeated back to them. So now you will learn, Chen continued. You will learn why humanity spent 3 centuries trying to avoid this moment. You will learn what happens when our patience ends. You will learn to value the peace we offered, because you will see what exists without it. She gestured, and the council members found themselves back on their station. But something had changed. Every communication network in the galaxy was now carrying the same message, broadcast simultaneously on every frequency. To all species of the galaxy, the Terran Federation hereby withdraws from all treaties, all trade agreements, all diplomatic relations, and all military cooperation. Effective immediately, humanity will no longer mediate your conflicts, negotiate your disputes, or prevent your wars. You are on your own. The implications hit the galaxy like a physical blow. Without human mediation, dozens of frozen conflicts would reignite. Without human trade networks, entire economies would collapse. Without human peacekeeping forces, old grudges would explode into warfare. Within hours, fighting broke out between the Vrex Empire and the Silicon Republics over mining rights that had been disputed for decades. The hive clusters, no longer constrained by human protection of the outer rim, began expanding aggressively into settled space. Trade wars erupted as species tried to fill the economic vacuum left by humanity's withdrawal. The galaxy began tearing itself apart. Emergency communications flooded human space from every government, every species, every faction. They begged for humanity to return. They offered reparations, territory, trade concessions, anything to restore the stability that 3 centuries of human involvement had provided. Admiral Chen received them all, and ignored them all. On the 6th day of the war, as conflicts raged across a dozen star systems and the galactic economy collapsed, the human fleet finally arrived at its ultimate destination, the Zephyrian homeworld of Hegemonia Prime. The planet hung in space like a jewel, orbited by massive defense stations and protected by the largest fleet in Zephyrian space. Every ship that had survived the human advance had been recalled to defend their homeworld. The defense of Hegemonia Prime was the greatest military effort in Zephyrian history. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier had been gathered to protect their homeworld. The orbital defense grid could destroy entire fleets. The planetary shields could withstand the bombardment of 1,000 ships. The hegemony's finest warriors stood ready to die rather than surrender. It did not matter. Admiral Chen's fleet did not attack the defenses. They did not engage the enemy ships. They did not even acknowledge the existence of the Zephyrian military forces. Instead, they simply ignored them. Human ships phased through the orbital defense grid as if it were made of light. They passed through the planetary shields like ghosts walking through walls. They materialized in the upper atmosphere of Hegemonia Prime itself. Hanging in the sky like dark angels of judgment, Supreme Commander Vextal, leader of all Zephyrian forces, watched in horror from his command bunker as human ships took positions above every major city on his homeworld. His weapons could not target them. His fighters could not intercept them. His defenses were useless against an enemy that existed partially outside normal space. "Fire everything," he screamed into his communicator. "All ships, all stations, maximum firepower. Kill them!" The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with desperate fury. Energy beams, missile volleys, and exotic weapons lanced out toward the human ships. The bombardment was intense enough to glass a continent. It passed harmlessly through the phased human vessels, striking nothing but empty air. Then the humans fired back, but they did not target military installations. They did not aim at spaceports or defense centers. Instead, they began systematically destroying every symbol of Zephyrian authority. Government buildings simply ceased to exist, reduced to their component atoms by weapons that deleted matter from reality. Monuments to hegemony victories crumbled into dust. Military academies vanished as if they had never been built. The humans were not just conquering Hegemonia Prime. They were erasing it. Every statue, every palace, every symbol of Zephyrian power was being methodically removed from existence. But the civilian population was left untouched. Citizens cowered in their homes as the symbols of their civilization disappeared around them. but not a single human weapon was aimed at a non-military target. Admiral Chen's voice echoed across the planet as the destruction continued. People of Hegemonia Prime, your government chose to murder children and broadcast their crimes as entertainment. Your leaders expected other species to cower in fear. Instead, they awakened something that had been sleeping for 3 centuries. Above the capital city, the massive palace of the hegemony began to dissolve. The ancient structure that had housed Zephyrian rulers for 1,000 years was reduced to nothing, atom by atom, as human weapons dismantled it with surgical precision. Your military might has proven irrelevant. Your defenses have proven useless. Your technology has proven primitive. You are not being conquered. You are being educated. Today you learn what exists beyond the mercy you took for granted. In his command bunker, Supreme Commander Vexdal felt his world ending around him. Not just his planet, but his entire understanding of the universe. For centuries, the Zephyrian hegemony had been the galaxy's greatest military power. They had conquered 40 star systems through strength and terror. They had believed themselves to be apex predators in a universe of prey. They had been wrong. They had been living in a kindergarten, protected by a species they had mistaken for weak teachers. Today, the real predators had emerged from hiding. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "Admiral Chen is requesting to speak with you directly." Vexdal's hands shook as he accepted the transmission. The human admiral appeared on his screen, standing on what was clearly the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, human officers monitored displays showing the complete destruction of his forces. "Supreme Commander," Chen's voice was calm and professional, "your military is defeated. Your government is dissolved. Your homeworld is under human control. You have 2 choices. You can surrender unconditionally and face trial for war crimes, or you can continue to resist and watch your entire species follow your civilization into extinction." Vexdal tried to speak, tried to find words that could express his shock and terror. The being on the screen was not some alien monster. She was a middle-aged human female who looked like she could have been his daughter's teacher. But her eyes held the power to unmake worlds. What do you want?" "He finally managed. Justice," Chen replied. "The beings responsible for the massacre on New Eden will face trial. The Zephyrian military will be disbanded. Your government will be dissolved. Your species will exist at the mercy of humanity from this day forward. And if I refuse," Chen's expression did not change, "then your species ceases to exist. Not just your government or your military, your entire species. Every Zephyrian in the galaxy. We have located all of your colonies, all of your ships, all of your people. Refuse and they all die. Choose." The choice was no choice at all. Vexdal transmitted his unconditional surrender to every Zephyrian force in the galaxy. The greatest military power in known space had been reduced to nothing in 6 days, but Admiral Chen was not finished. As Zephyrian forces across the galaxy laid down their arms, human ships began appearing throughout civilized space, not attacking, not conquering, simply taking position. Above every major world, around every important system, near every center of power, human vessels materialized and waited. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were no longer pretending to be weak. They were revealing themselves as the force they had always been, the ultimate arbiters of galactic civilization. The aftermath of the 6-day war reshaped the galaxy in ways that no one had imagined possible. The Galactic Council was dissolved and reformed with humanity, holding permanent veto power over all decisions. The Zephyrian hegemony was broken into dozens of smaller states, each monitored by human peacekeeping forces. The Altarian Republic remained fragmented, its former unity shattered beyond repair. Trade networks were restructured with human corporations controlling key routes. Military agreements were rewritten with humanity as the ultimate guarantor of peace. Technological development was regulated by human scientists who revealed that they had been centuries ahead of galactic civilization all along. The species that had once mocked human weakness now competed for human approval. The beings who had dismissed human diplomacy as cowardice now begged for human mediation in their conflicts. The galaxy that had taken human patience for granted now lived in constant awareness that their entire existence depended on human mercy. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of his new ship, watching as construction began on humanity's first open military base outside of human space. The massive station would orbit the former Zephyrian capital, a permanent reminder to the galaxy of what happened when human patience ended. Admiral Chen joined him at the viewing port. She looked older than she had 6 days ago, but her eyes still held the cold fire that had terrified a galaxy. "Any regrets, Admiral?" Marcus asked. Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching as human engineers worked alongside alien labor crews. "I regret that it was necessary," she finally said. "For 3 centuries we tried to show them that strength and mercy could coexist. We tried to teach them that power meant responsibility. They refused to learn." She pointed to the construction site where beings from a dozen species worked together under human supervision. "Look at them now, working together, cooperating, building something constructive instead of tearing each other apart. It took 6 days of war to achieve what 3 centuries of diplomacy could not. And now they know the truth. Humanity was never weak. We were never helpless. We were never at their mercy." Chen's reflection in the viewport showed a tired woman carrying the weight of a galaxy's fears. "We were the guardians they never knew they had. We were the immune system that kept their civilization from destroying itself. We were the parents watching over children who thought they were adults." A new communication request appeared on Marcus's display. Another species requesting human mediation in a territorial dispute. Another government asking for human protection from aggressive neighbors. Another plea for the stability that only human strength could provide. "They understand now," Chen continued. "They understand that they were never our equals. They were our responsibility. For 300 years we protected them from us. Now we protect them from each other. The age of illusion is over. The galaxy knows what it always was, a human protectorate." The construction continued below them, aliens and humans working side by side to build a future shaped by human will. The galaxy was at peace. Not the fragile peace of balanced powers, but the lasting peace of absolute authority benevolently applied. The 6-day war had ended with humanity's victory. But more than that, it had ended with the galaxy's education. Every species now understood the gift they had been given for 3 centuries. Every government knew the price of taking human mercy for granted. The universe had learned to value peace, because now they understood what existed without it. Humanity had tried to rule through example. When that failed, they ruled through strength. The result was the same: a galaxy where conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than